Watch me. Anything could happen. Bigger than we imagine. We're gonna break free.
Screenforce, what's on?
Watch me.
Welcome back. So this video is designed essentially to go into more depth about the method. We talk a little bit about the experimental controls, and we go into a lot more detail around the innovative and agile technology that we used. But in essence, by the end of this video, I want you to take from it how I guess methodologically rigorous it is, the integrity that sits behind this, because if we are going to look at cross-platform effectiveness, essentially we have to be fair to all platforms. So if we start from the beginning, let's go back to advertising 101. An ad needs to cut through and be remembered if it's to have any effect on the purchase occasion, right? So, and good media should support these two quite simple but really critical points. So ad cut through, we consider via attention, and we'll talk about how we do that. And memory, essentially, we look at by, sales uplift, or in essence, product choice. And again, we'll talk about how we do that in a moment. But those are the two critical parts of advertising effectiveness. And we look at these two things across multiple platforms in multiple countries. Actually, it was a big study. So it was 30,000 test ads. It was about 2,500 participants. It was Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. It was 5 platforms, and it was about 11 separate studies. So 11 separate sets of data for us to look at these results. That is huge. That is really huge. This is not case study. This is quantitative work that is multi-platform, individual level, view and a sale. So the actual platforms that we looked at were TV on TV screen, obviously. We looked at BVOD on mobile, and TV Now was the platform of choice where people could actually make a decision from the menu on which program they watched. We looked at YouTube on mobile, Facebook on mobile, Instagram on mobile. And then we did some synergy effects where a separate group of people would be asked to consider, or to view their TV like in their lounge room, but then go straight into viewing on Facebook or YouTube. So a second platform whilst they're viewing the television. We'll talk a little bit about how that works in the next video. So let's kind of give a bit of an overview of the collection app. The technology is agile because we have an app that collects the data, essentially, which means at the moment our businesses run it in 6 different countries, and we could run it in any country. But essentially what happens is we recruit panelists. We are GDPR compliant. We recruit panelists, we get their permission to do what I'm about to tell you. So someone will download our app, and the app does a couple of things. It essentially sends them to the test view. So if you've signed up to go to Facebook, you'll be directed to Facebook. You log in as yourself. We do not capture personal information. We do not capture your login whatsoever. Once you're in Facebook, we can actually intercept natural ad load with the test ads, right? So that's a really, really important point because we do that on all platforms. So what that means is the same ads are seen by every single group. So if TV, Facebook, Instagram, so the same ads are seen, so we can intercept ad load. And in fact, we have tried to be really, really fair around the ads that we've chosen. So sometimes some of the questions I'm asked is, well, obviously long ads are more television and short ads are more social. So, how do you reconcile that? So we've been really, really careful about our ad choice and made sure that we have a good cross-section of long, medium and short ads so that, some suit one platform and not the other. But on top of that, we've picked a really good cross-section of categories. So we're not just picking, FMCG, we also have picked auto, we've picked perfume or cologne, we've picked clothing, fast food. We wanted to make sure that we represented all different categories so that the ads that we chose didn't have, it wasn't the impact, that we're not measuring that, it's the platform that we're measuring. So back to the collection. So you've downloaded our app, you've gone to Facebook, we're showing you ads that's seamless. You don't really know that we've actually put those ads in there. In the meantime, we actually switch on the camera, so we intercept the camera at the time on when the ad's on the screen. So we're taking facial footage at 5 frames per second. And what happens is that facial footage then goes back to our machine learning models, and we essentially transpose those mathematical gaze points into whether you have actually seen the ad on screen. So if you're looking at your mobile, are you looking at the ad on the screen? Are you looking at the screen but not the ad? Or are you completely looking away? And in the sake of television, so that's high, low, and non-attention. So how we do it with TV is a little bit different, but similar. So the models are the same. So it's about whether you're looking at the ad, whether you're not looking at the ad, but television is whether you've left the room. So the non-attention is whether you've left the room, because obviously with mobile it's slightly different, but it's fair across platforms. So how we do the collection on television is you still download the app on your mobile, but we actually send a connector where you then stream the program that you choose to the TV. And I think we had about 8 or 9 different programs. So, some humor, we had some drama, we had some reality. You can make a choice from the programming, press go, and it streams it to your TV. And we put the mobile in front of your television. We send you a little tripod, and then it films that way. Okay, so the other thing that happens is that, let's go back to the Facebook example. You're watching for 10 minutes, you're messaging your friends, you're connecting, you're switching it around, you're looking away, you just make a cup of tea, whatever you do normally on Facebook. What else happens is we're collecting inward-facing variables, right? So not only are we collecting facial footage, which is outward-facing, we're collecting device variables. So again, we don't scrape any personal information, but what we do scrape is scroll speed, whether the sound was on, whether the sound was off, and the volume. We collect viewability metrics, so we can tell, how much of the ad was on screen, whether the screen was covered by the ad or not. We collect how long it was on screen for. So those are a whole lot of interesting variables as well, which the results will show have a very high relationship with ad impact. And the final thing that someone does, so they've downloaded the app, they've been on Facebook for 10 minutes, then they're asked to go to our virtual store. So essentially all our virtual store is a bunch of shelving for each category. So you go to the perfume category and you have to make a choice from 5 competitors. You go to the grocery aisle and you have to make a choice from 5 biscuits or whatever it is. Also, I think we had chocolate. And then essentially you're done. And all of that data then comes back to us and we can look at individual level whether you've seen an ad and what you chose. But what we actually do, and I need to explain it here, is it's not just about brand choice, because what you'll know is that big brands get more people who buy them more often, right? So if we didn't add a baseline, what it basically means is we're reporting just average market share. So it's really, really important to explain that when we talk about STAS, it's short-term advertising strength, we add a baseline in to our results. So what that means is that we collect choice from all the countries, but they haven't seen the ads. Then we apply that as an index to they have viewed and what they have purchased. So essentially it's an index between brand choice from the non-exposed group and brand choice from the exposed group. So what you need to understand when we talk about STAS in the future videos is 100 is the baseline. So 100 is the point at which, anything below 100 still means an ad has an impact, but not perhaps beyond incremental. Okay, so the higher the index, the more the brand has performed incrementally. And that's a really important point. So in summary, the technology, the methodological design, the controls we add, all add up to a really robust way to measure cross-platform effectiveness really, really fairly. Please send me questions if you have any, but I hope this has explained how much work we go to make sure that this is real and meaningful. So we've talked about the essential collection method. That stays stable for most of what we do. But what that means now is we can apply different things to collect different nuances. The first one I want to explain is advertising decay. So advertising decay is essentially the rate at which an ad erodes over time. So we're looking at ad effect and how long it lasts. And that's really important to advertisers, because if you're paying a CPM up front, you want your ad to last in memory for longer than just be in one ear, out the other. So advertising decay and the rate at which the impact declines. So how we did that is, after the first view, you've made your choice. We'll go back to our Facebook example. You've made the choice, but then 14 days later, you actually go back to, we ask you to go back to the store again, and you make choices again. And we haven't, preempted it or given you any ideas of what you had picked last time, but you're asked to fill in the choice survey with no re-exposure. And secondly, then we ask you again on day 28 to go back. So what we end up doing is we build a STAS score for day 1, we build a STAS score for day 14, and we build a STAS score for day 28. Theory suggests there is an erosion, but we can test that by doing this method. And we did that across multiple platforms. The other thing we do is look at synergy. We talked a little bit about that at the beginning of this video. So we looked at the impact on sales of repeat exposures across different platforms, not the same platform, different platforms. So what we did is we exposed all of the ads to someone on TV, for example, but then we asked them to go to Facebook and YouTube directly after, and expose them to the same ads. So it's essentially a repeat exposures experiment, but it's looking at the synergy effects across platform. The other thing we did was frequency. So this is true frequency in its raw form. So it's looking at the impact of repetitive exposures across the same platform. So in this case, what we did is we halved our sample. So we showed a separate group. That's really important. We showed a separate group, 6 ads on rotation. And the importance of that is we could then sort of understand whether attention is greater if you see an ad twice, or if STAS is higher if you see an ad twice, and whether that has any impact across platform. So everyone thinks that frequency matters, so we were able to test that. So I think that's it for today's video, and I hope you tune in for some of the results.
Thank you very much for this brief insight into the method. Dear Karen, the first and somehow cheeky question for researchers is, how valid, how reliable are these results?
Sure, I mean, that's a very important question. I think the short answer is this is not the first time we've done this work. So we've done this work across multiple countries before, across multiple different times, and the results are all very, very similar, certainly in terms of the patterns. And when patterns are consistent across different boundary conditions, this is when we know it's reliable, valid, and meaningful.
Okay, this app seems to be really exciting. Sounds like an efficient way to deep dive in the middle of the daily routine and life of the test persons. How do I have to imagine it exactly? In a jogging suit from the sofa in the service of science?
I don't really want to imagine that, but at the end of the day, the app is designed to take collection in a natural environment. So, Wolfram, if you want to be in a jogging suit, you can be, but others might watch TV differently, or in terms of the mobile groups, we know that there have been people that have done the groups on public transport, and that's the reason why we built the technology the way we have, because most research studies around media effectiveness actually have limitations in that the collection is not natural. So that was a really big important part for us.
Okay, this sounds great. So the app not only plays the test spots, but also records the test subjects' eye movements. How does that work exactly? When is someone attentive and when not?
We try to keep that fairly transparent and easy to understand. At the end of the day, for the mobile groups, what we look at is if they're looking at the screen and at the ad, that is 100% attentive. If they're looking at the screen but not at the ad, so they might be looking at their feed, that is what we call passive. And then for the mobile groups, non-attentive is when we can't detect a face at all. For the TV groups, it's a little bit different, but very fair across both platforms. So for TV, if you're sitting on the couch or they're close enough to it and we can actually see you staring straight at the television screen, that's 100% attentive. If you're in close proximity sitting on the couch but maybe talking to a friend so your face is not looking directly at the ad, that is passive. And for non-attentive, it is literally out of the room. So if we can't see a human, we have to make an assumption that you've left the room.
One more question about the test spots. Were all spots really suitable for social media? Facebook, for example, gives concrete recommendations for the design of spots so that they are noticed and work in their feed.
That's a good question and an important question. The reality is if we were to play ads that were specifically optimized for Facebook on television, then that's a disadvantage to television. If we were to play ads that were specifically optimized for television on Facebook, that's equally a disadvantage. So what we've done is we've taken a bunch of different categories, a bunch of different ad lengths, and we have played them across both or all of the platforms. And the reason why we do that is because essentially what we're trying to do is look at what's normal. So we have to isolate the effect of the media, and to do that we have to keep the creative constant, because to Facebook's point, and they're probably correct, that if there was a more suitable format played on their feed, it probably would have a better effect. And that's okay, so that's good news, so it's only up from there. But if you want to truly understand the impact of different platforms, you have to make sure you isolate and control for as many mediating effects as possible, and creative is definitely one of those.
Very interesting. The study is a DACH edition that covers not only Germany but also Austria and Switzerland. What does it mean for the brands and spots you have selected, and how high was the proportion of tests in Austria and Switzerland?
Some of the creative or the ads, I'm sorry, were changed. I mean, for example, there is a rice brand I can remember that was not consistent across all countries. So when we recruited in the panel, we obviously double checked for whereabouts they were doing the study from, and those that were living in Austria, for example, would get a different set of products in the rice category than those in Germany. So we were really careful about that to make sure that we were sensitive to some of the bigger brands that are different in different countries. In terms of the proportion, the German proportion was the greatest, and Austria and Switzerland represented 10% of the sample each. So the samples are smaller, but as a whole, the patterns were very, very similar.
Watch me. Anything could happen. Bigger than we imagine. We're gonna break free.
Screenforce, what's on?
Watch me.